Hello and welcome everyone to another MMS info session. As you know, these sessions are offered under the CMS Measures Management System contract, which is led by Battelle. I'm Brenna Rabel and I oversee education and outreach on this project. Today's session is on maximizing efficiency of information gathering with the Novo Measure Scan tool. You're going to hear from my colleague, Dr. Meredith Eastman, about the activities associated with information gathering, which is a key aspect of measure conceptualization, the first stage of the measure life cycle. Then we're going to turn the presentation over to our colleague, Amy Librand, who's going to demo the Novo Measure Scan tool that we've developed on behalf of CMS to help simplify some of these activities. And as you know by now, these info sessions are part of an ongoing effort to engage measure developers and other stakeholders in quality measurement topics. That's an effort that also includes a series of newsletters and bulletins, along with special announcement emails, public webinars, and routine updates to the Measures Management System website. We're happy to report that starting this month, we are resuming doing these info sessions on a monthly basis rather than every other month, so that we can continue to provide up-to-date information on a wide range of topics related to quality measure development and quality measurement in general. So before we jump into the presentation, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. Second, all participants are going to be muted during the call. There's always an opportunity for Q&A at the end, and that will be done via the chat feature. And then finally, the presentation slides from today's session will be posted to the MMS website, and the recording from today's presentation will be posted to the CMS YouTube page at a later date. And with that, we can go to the next slide so that Meredith can go through our agenda.
Great. Thank you so much, Brenna, and thank you everyone for joining today. This is just an overview of what we'll be talking about today. As Brenna mentioned, we're going to talk about information gathering, or info gathering for short, as a step in the measure life cycle. We'll talk about what it is, why we do it, and the steps that it entails. I'll also describe some typical approaches to environmental scans and their drawbacks. Next, we'll transition to a review and demonstration of two tools that Battelle has developed for CMS to support efficient info gathering. These are the Environmental Scan Support Tool and the Novo Measure Scan Tool. And as Brenna mentioned, we'll have time for questions at the end. So this slide includes a graphic from the Measures Management System Blueprint that depicts where info gathering lies in the measure life cycle. You'll note that info gathering falls under the conceptualization stage that initiates the measure life cycle. This stage encompasses researching a variety of sources, conducting gap analysis, developing a business case, and engaging multiple stakeholders. The end goal of the measure conceptualization stage as a whole is a meaningful, well-researched measure concept with well-defined initial components. We'll talk in greater detail about how info gathering in particular supports that goal. And I will say that while info gathering is shown here under conceptualization, it may also be conducted at other stages and steps in the measure life cycle, for example, during measure respecification and reevaluation. So what is info gathering? As shown in the slide, info gathering is a systematic and comprehensive gathering of information that results in a knowledge base about a measure or a measure concept that includes things like quality goals, strengths and weaknesses of pertinent scientific evidence, anticipated impacts and outcomes, which may form the foundation of a business case, evidence of general agreement or conflicting views on quality issues, and awareness of prior pertinent measure development work. So info gathering essentially refers to all the information a measure developer can glean about a measure prior to the testing phases. It's the time when measure developers can determine whether the concept they're developing shows any promise, whether there are any similar measures already in existence, and it can help determine what impact such a measure might have on the quality of care being delivered for a condition. Why do we conduct info gathering and why is it important? Info gathering supports identification of appropriate priority areas for measure development. Additionally, it ensures that measure development activities build upon a body of evidence and relevant prior work. This is particularly important to inform measure feasibility, because examining prior work allows measure developers to build upon existing data elements that have previously been identified as feasible or to improve upon feasibility. In addition, examining prior work on a measure or a measure concept can help to flag early on any potential unintended negative consequences that might be mitigated or avoided. In addition to these primary reasons, I also want to note that information gathering supports submission requirements of NQF, the consensus-based entity. It provides the knowledge base for business case development and strongly influences subsequent steps in development by identifying the quality gaps the measure is intended to fill. So by doing all of this info gathering work early on, developers learn whether the concept is truly worth investing further effort into. The next slide shows the 8 steps that comprise info gathering, and these steps may not occur sequentially. I will talk about each one individually, starting with identify healthcare quality issues and its priority area. This defines the scope and the focus of the measure and its relation to healthcare needs and quality improvement. In addition to quality priorities that should be considered, it's important to also consider top volume and top cost conditions as areas of measure focus. The next step is to conduct an environmental scan, and this includes a review and evaluation of peer-reviewed and gray literature, clinical practice guidelines, relevant legislation and regulations, and existing related and competing measures, empirical data, and expert and stakeholder input. The environmental scan is critical for the identification of related or competing measures and may identify opportunities for consolidation or alignment between measures. It may identify clinical guidelines that are relevant to the topic, or identify studies that have used similar measures in same or similar settings or populations. This box is in red on this slide because we will be digging into the environmental support scan tool in a few moments. The next step is to analyze empirical data. If such data are available, measure developers can analyze statistical data on incidence or prevalence to identify notable gaps or variations in care. Such data may also provide evidence to support inclusion or exclusion for various populations. Measure developers might also consider analyzing return on investment data to support development of the business case. And lastly, analysis of empirical data can also identify feasibility or data availability concerns early on in measure development. The next step is to evaluate information collected during the environmental scan and data analysis. So the findings of the environmental scan and the empirical data analysis could lead to important decisions. For example, if a related measure is identified through the environmental scan, the developer should consider how the initial measure concept is differentiated from the related measure. Perhaps the measure could be respecified for a different population, a different setting, or a different data source. Next, we conduct measurement gap analysis. The purpose of the gap analysis is to identify what's missing from the measure focus or topic, and it's critical for the identification of related or competing measures. This box is in red because the de novo measure scan, which we will demonstrate in a few moments, can aid in measurement gap analysis. Next, we have justification of the creation of new measures. So if the environmental scan and the gap analysis suggest that no existing measures are suitable for adoption or respecification, then it makes sense to develop a new measure to address the identified healthcare quality problem. The considerations for justification of a new measure will vary by measure type, but they include the development of a solid rationale or identification of evidence that the measure is linked to the desired health outcome. Next, we apply the measure evaluation criteria. At this stage, importance and feasibility are particularly important criteria for moving measures forward in the development process. For importance, consider the measure's potential impact on costs and gaps in care, and whether the measure can help translate clinical guidelines into meaningful measures. For feasibility, consider potential data sources. Other measure evaluation criteria, such as scientific acceptability and usability, are more pertinent at later stages of measure development. And lastly, we have prepare an initial list of measures or measure topics. The list will be informed by results of all previous steps and could potentially include respecified new measures or measure concepts. Having gone through all the previous steps of info gathering, the resulting list will include measures and measure topics that are appropriately aligned with or differentiated from existing measures. So by conducting these 8 steps, info gathering creates the knowledge base that informs many aspects of measure development and ensures that the work builds on a body of prior knowledge and evidence. Now we're going to focus in a little bit on the environmental scan step a little more closely. The typical approach to conducting an environmental scan is to use keywords or phrases related to the measure or measure concept to individually scan relevant databases and search engines for information about existing measures, about clinical practice guidelines, and other relevant topics. There are some limitations with this approach. First, it can be very time-consuming and resource-intensive to scan multiple databases and search engines using various permutations of keywords and phrases. Second, those words and phrases must be precise in order to yield robust results. In addition, the searcher must ensure the correct time period is being referenced and that the most appropriate sources are being consulted. And lastly, evaluating and culling results based on relevance can be a very resource-intensive process. So to address these limitations, Battelle has developed 2 tools for CMS to support efficient info gathering, both of which are available to the public on the CMIT platform. These are the Environmental Scan Support Tool and the Novo Measure Scan tool. Both of these tools use artificial intelligence to find and identify the most relevant information related to measure concepts, and by using them, you can enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of info gathering activities. So with that, I will now turn the presentation over to my colleague, Amy Lybrand, who will describe these tools in a bit more detail and walk us through a demonstration.
Thank you, Meredith. I am going to first give a brief overview of the Environmental Scan Support Tool, or ESST, as we've called it for short. So before we get into the de novo measure scan demo here, the ESST, Environmental Scan Support Tool, is available on both the public CMIT site and the expanded access CMIT site that requires login. The only difference is that there is additional functionality on the expanded site. So the ESST scan results for CMIT measures are the same on both sites. The ESST provides a prioritized list of the most relevant top 30 abstracts and top 30 articles in PubMed, PubMed Central, and CINAHL that are specific to measures in the CMIT inventory. The ESST is updated monthly with new results. The ESST offers a variety of features, including hyperlinks to the source documents and export features as well. You can export actually to Excel or as an RIS bibliographic citation file. The results in ESST for a given, I should note, for a given CMIT measure are specific to that measure, and it's a static list that is updated monthly. Whereas the de novo measure scan is a dynamic tool that generates the scan results based on user inputs. So the de novo measure scan, which you'll see in action in a moment, is a feature of the ESST that is available on expanded access CMIT. The way it works is the user selects search terms from a list of clinical quality measure concepts that mirror the structure of a measure to essentially create a new measure description with the search terms, and then return the most relevant literature related to that query. Both the ESST and de novo measure scan pull from the same PubMed, PubMed Central, and CINAHL content and use similar artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to identify and prioritize the most relevant literature related to measure concepts. The de novo measure scan is useful in a variety of ways. Because it allows the user to select their own search terms, it enables the user to gather support for novel measure concepts. Measure developers can use it as a jumping off point for information gathering when starting to develop a new measure, which allows the developer to show that there's science behind measure concepts or to identify new information and gather up-to-date support to justify the respecification or maintenance of an existing CMIT measure. And CMS can use de novo measure scan as a collaboration tool to provide useful feedback to MIDS developers during the information gathering process. ESST and de novo measure scan can also be used together. For example, to justify respecification of an existing CMIT measure, a developer can check the ESST or the measure in question to get the most recent scan data, then compare the ESST results with the preceding scan for that measure, the evidence cited in the measure information form, to identify gaps, areas that need further support to justify respecification of that measure. In this way, the ESST enables a user to narrow the focus of additional information gathering to themes in need of more evidence. Then, using the de novo measure scan, the developer can run a scan using search terms specific to the gap areas of interest to identify additional support needed to justify the respecification. So I've mentioned that the search vocabulary in de novo measure scan is based on clinical quality measure concepts that describe a measure. What these concepts are the components of a measure description, including the target population, health status or utilization, change concept, output, and care setting. A user will query de novo measure scan by selecting search terms related to these concepts to essentially build a new measure description. On the back end, this works by using artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to identify and prioritize the most relevant literature related to these concepts. Now, why is this better than a conventional keyword search, you might ask? Well, the de novo measure scan and ESST are not, they do not employ keyword search. They employ a relations search. So in other words, the system uses the concepts and their relationships to find relevant documents that have the same concepts and relations. Whereas in a keyword search, you are only searching for concepts, which can often result in a lot of false positives in your results. The ESST and de novo measure scan provide a much higher precision in recall than a keyword search, thus making the scan process much more efficient because the user then doesn't need to sift through loads of results to find the relevant content. As I mentioned previously, the de novo measure scan is available on the expanded access version of CMIT, which requires a login. The expanded access CMIT also includes the enhanced version of ESST, although a more limited version of ESST is available on the public CMIT site as well. And the results for the ESST on both sites are the same. So anyone may request a CMIT account to access de novo measure scan on the expanded access CMIT. You'll just want to follow the link noted here to submit an account request, and then you will be walked through the account process and be provided an authentication token. Okay, I'm going to start the demo of the de novo measure scan now, and I will share my screen. Okay, first we are going to log into the CMIT site, and this will bring us to the authenticator code, and you will get instructions on how to access all of this when you request an account. Oh, whoops, login failed. Let's try this again. Authenticator, there we go, it just timed out. There we go. So the home page brings you to your account page, and across the top you can see different tabs for measure inventory, measure summary, environmental scan, and so on. So first, I will show you a glimpse of the ESST on this expanded version of CMIT. So here you can see under the Measure Inventory tab, this shows all of the measures that are in the CMIT inventory, and this is where we can actually search for a measure that we're interested in. To view details about a measure, what we will do is just click on the measure title to open that information about the measure. So here you can see all of the information associated with that measure, including the environmental scan, or the ESST as we've been calling it. On this environmental scan page for this measure, this is the 30-day unplanned readmissions for cancer patients measure. These are the results of the most recent environmental scan. These are the top 30 abstracts and top 30 articles updated monthly from PubMed, PubMed Central, and CINAHL, and also citations from this measure's measure information form, which is noted by the source called EndNote. You can also find a quick start guide for the ESST with more details on the functionality and use cases under the header here under environmental scan. If you click on current scan, it'll take you right to that information where you can download the quick start guide and use cases. Now this is also where you access the de novo measure scan. I've already opened it here in a tab just for ease. This is the home page of the de novo measure scan. You can find help aids here, including a de novo measure scan quick start guide here at the top, and then also just some accordion drop downs that give you some brief descriptions of the functionality. And this home page is where you begin a new search. This page also shows you any searches that you have saved down here at the bottom, and any searches that have been shared with you. To begin a new search, we type the name of our search in the Create a New Search Name text box here. For this demo, we will be generating a de novo measure scan for a new quality measure for opioid medication management. So I'm just going to type that right here in the box, opioid medication management, and then click Save and Continue, which then opens a new page where we will select our search settings and properties and characteristics related to this new measure we are gathering information for. So under search mode, we can choose to search only citations, only full text articles, or both. The search name is auto-populated from the previous page. Now we can also add a description of the new measure if we want. This is optional. I'm just going to pop in here a description. Next, we select the maximum number of search results that we want. Now we will select the properties and characteristics of the new measure we want to generate a scan for. The properties and characteristics represent the components of a measure information form. So properties include denominator, numerator, and change concept. The denominator is the pre-existing state prior to the change concept. The numerator is the health state or healthcare service that is more or less likely to occur due to the experience of the change concept. And the change concept is the healthcare behavior that intends to change the likelihood of the numerator. We can select search terms for health status or utilization, but not both, by clicking the radio button. For this example, we will select health status. For this hypothetical measure, medication management for adults using opioids for pain, the health status would be search terms related to pain. The health status denominator would be something associated with pain. So we will just start to type in the text box search terms that we're interested in. You will see the list of related search terms appear in the dropdown, And you just want to select the search terms, any search terms that you want to search with. Now, just a quick note about search terms. You can see here that de novo measure scan does not allow us to search using arbitrary terms. Instead, the tool uses structured search terms and existing vocabulary, basically. These search terms are pre-identified concepts from the clinical quality measure ontology with some expansion using National Library of Medicine resources. Using these predefined terms allows de novo measure scan to pre-process and index the literature to pull out related concepts and identify the relationships between them. Now, this is a necessary step to significantly reduce the amount of time that is needed to process the millions of documents that it's searching. We'll just add another search term there, and we will do the same for the numerator health status. So for the numerator health status, for our new measure, it will be search terms related to opioid abuse or addiction. This is the health state that is more or less likely due to the experience of the change concept, which we will select next. So I will select as many or as few search terms as I wish to search with. Now we will select the change concept. For this measure, the change concept will be terms related to medication management. This is the healthcare behavior that intends to reduce the likelihood of the numerator. Medication management. Next, we will select characteristics. The population are the persons experiencing the change concept. For our hypothetical measure, we are interested in adults. Next, we select output. Output describes the impact of the change concept on the numerator. The output is generally a verb. For our measure, the output would describe the impact of medication management on the potential for opioid abuse or addiction. In this case, the output would be a term like prevent or decrease. The care setting is optional. The care setting is the setting during which the change concept occurs. For example, a doctor's office. Now, everything that I just described for the properties and characteristics is summarized in the de novo Measure Scan Quick Start Guide that you can download from the homepage. That Quick Start Guide includes examples and definitions of these clinical quality measure concepts like the numerator and denominator and so on, and how they relate in order to help you develop a search query. So make sure you download that start guide. Next, we will run the scan. Now note that the runtime of the de novo measure scans can vary, and the status of the scan can be monitored on the de novo measure scan homepage. It may take a few minutes to return to the homepage as the scan has now started and is working behind the scenes to identify literature. Also, please note that in some cases you may receive scan results instantaneously if there's no queue, or it may take several minutes to several hours, even up to a day or two for a scan to complete, depending on the number of scans ahead of yours and the complexity of your scan query. This is normal. And while it may take some time to complete a scan, the de novo measure scan is exponentially faster and more efficient than conducting a conventional keyword search to start information gathering for a measure. Once you return to the home page, you will be able to see your queries. Oh, that's good timing. You'll be able to see your query here at the bottom under Saved Searches. You can see this is the query that we just did. Opioid medication management, and it is complete. There is nobody in the queue ahead of me. It's possible if there were people in the queue, the status may say in progress, or and then you would receive information about how many number of people or how many number of scans are ahead of yours, your queue position. If you happen to log out of your CMIT session, the scan will continue to run in the background. Now here on the home page, of the de novo measure scan, you can also see that we have options to share, edit, delete, view results, and rerun a scan. Now to edit, you just click on edit, and what this does is it brings up the page of your query, your original query. This is the original search parameters for that saved scan. Edit is very useful when you want to change inputs without starting a whole new scan. The edit page shows your search terms from the scan that you previously ran, which you can then delete or add to. We will cancel out of that. You can also rerun a scan, which is useful if more than a month has passed since the scan was run and you want to view more recent literature. Keep in mind that the scan is updated monthly with new information. So if several months have passed since you ran a scan, you may want to rerun that scan. So we're going to take a look at a previously run scan results page here. On the scan results page, which you can view by clicking on view results, takes a few moments to pop up, so that's why I just have it already prepared. On the results page, we can filter on relevance, source, publication date, document ID, content type, related documents, and so on. Relevance is measured using an algorithm that is optimized based on human review of results. Source documents may come from PubMed, as noted by PMID, PubMed Central, as noted by PMCID, or the nursing database CINAHL. There's also, there is a source type called EndNote. Now, if there are associated measures in the CMIT inventory for a result, this will show as an EndNote source type. So this is the internal document repository of measure information form citations for measures in the CMIT inventory. So for documents that also appear in scan results for existing CMIT measures, which are the ESST results that I showed at the beginning, you can view those associated measures by clicking on View List for the result. And you can see here the associated measure, which this result is also associated with, shows up right here. It's hyperlinked, and it will open that measure summary in the CMIT tool if you click on it. So let's see here. We can also filter on publication date, document title, content type. So content type indicates whether the document is a full text article or a citation. We can go directly to the article or abstract by clicking View Source Text, which opens the document in the source. In this case, it's PubMed. We can also see related documents. Related documents are documents if there's, for example, this article is in PubMed. It's also a PubMed Central article, so that would be noted under related documents. Now, at the top of the page on the results page, you can view details. If we need to refresh our memory, what did we search for? This will bring up all the search parameters for that search. We can also edit our search terms by clicking Edit Details. We can rerun the scan if you want some more updated results. And then you can also export the results to an Excel file. This concludes the demo of the de novo measure scan. This tool is freely available to all CMIT account holders, and anyone can apply to receive a CMIT account. I will hand it back to you, Meredith.
Thanks, Amy. And I will actually hand it to Brenna to close us out.
Thank you so much. Would you mind passing me the ball? Thank you. All right. So as Amy mentioned she's going to be your primary point of contact if you have any questions specific to either of these tools. You can also reach out to Michael Bray, who is our CMS lead for this work. And then, of course, you can always put requests through our general inbox at mmssupport@battelle.org. Before we part today, I just wanted to make you aware of some things that are coming up later this month. So on January 29th, CMS is kicking off the 2021 pre-rulemaking cycle, and we are launching our new CMS Merit tool. That's the Measures Under Consideration Entry Review Information Tool, which is a web-based data collection portal that replaces the system that had been used in the past, which was JIRA. And there's going to be a technical webinar for measure submitters that's going to be held on February 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can click here in the slides to register for that webinar, or again, reach out to us at MMS Support. We are also doing our next MMS information session on February 24th, and that's going to be titled Transforming Measurement for Better Care, Lessons Learned About Patient-Centered Measurement. We have 3 external speakers who are going to take us through a real project that they worked on, partnering with patients and talking through some lessons learned on that. So it should be a really good one. And with that, I think we have covered everything for the day. So thank you so much for participating in today's info session. We were happy to have you. And we look forward to talking to you again next month. Thanks, everyone.